What is good, NBA fans? Welcome into the second episode of the new season. I am excited. There were two games on the docket last night to open the NBA season. We had the Brooklyn Nets visiting the Milwaukee Bucks, and then the second game of the night was the Golden State Warriors visiting the Los Angeles Lakers. And they were two excellent games. Jeremy Bauer's already in the chat. What's up, Jeremy? Two excellent games. I enjoyed them thoroughly. The play was a little sloppy at times. Guys were a little cold, especially to start each game. And Steph in the second game was very cold by his own estimation. He was trash on the shooting side, which I would probably agree with when you look at his numbers. But overall, he was impactful. I mean, just his gravity alone opened up a ton of them stuff for them. But we'll start with the first game, which is the defending NBA champs, Milwaukee Bucks, at home versus the Brooklyn Nets. And this is Brooklyn without Kyrie, but they have a whole bunch of other individuals that they've added to their roster. LaMarcus Aldridge is back, and you have Millsap. Patty Mills was their probably their best free agency signing, and at a cheap price. And just interested to see what exactly this team is. And the starting fives for each. Now, it was interesting for Milwaukee. So DiVincenzo is more than likely the slated starter if he were healthy. So you're like, okay, well, I assumed Pat Connaughton would end up being in the starting lineup, but instead Budenholzer kept him on the second unit, and he started Grayson Allen in his place. And Grayson Allen played all right, but the rest of the starters were what you'd anticipate. It was Giannis, Drew, Middleton, and Lopez, along with Grayson Allen. And then on the net side, it was KD, Harden, Nick Claxton, Blake Griffin, and Joe Harris. And Milwaukee started off, especially their big three, kind of slow to get the game going. And it was a little bit of is Milwaukee, sometimes the defending champs come in and they're just like excited with the rings that they're going to get and the moment and re-enjoying everything that happened in the past season. And early on, it kind of looked like that a little bit. Lopez got into foul trouble too in the first pretty early on. He has to take a seat. And the Bucks they're thin. They have a bunch of guys out with DiVincenzo and Bobby Portis and others. So that rotation is going to be like, 8 players, 9 players-ish, something along those lines. And then Drew Holiday, during the game, gets a heel contusion, so then he's out for the game. So they're kind of strapped for guys, and they got good production overall from another number of individuals. Wara, I don't know that I've ever seen, or if I have, it was in spot minutes here or there, but I genuinely don't recall ever having seen him. And he played really great with a ton of confidence. There were a number of shots where he was ISO'd at the top, and he's just kind of crab dribbling between his legs, trying to find some sort of opening, and then would have to hoist a shot. And most of those, you're like, that's not a good shot. But I don't know what their offense was going to do in those moments, if they were just resigned to watching him, crab dribble and whatnot. But Thanasis looked good. Usually a foul machine. Thanasis was not. I did like that Blake Griffin was in midseason complaining for him about not getting calls. It was like we're at game 40. There's everything. And I will say this, across both games, I was very happy with the officiating. It felt like playoff games almost. It was, in essence, just let them play. Let them run. We're not going to call the ticky-tack stuff. And especially in that first game, the free throw totals for each were what Trae Young would have gotten by himself last season. Milwaukee shot 18 total shots and Brooklyn shot 23. But 18 is a legit number that Trae Young would have had last year. So I enjoyed thoroughly the fact that the NBA and the officiating seems to have taken quite a few notes from FIBA over the summer and said, you know what? It's a more enjoyable product when the guys are just forced to stop complaining and get out there and run. And what's interesting in the second game, I thought the Lakers were getting more of the favorable calls, but the Warriors shot a number more free throws from them. But in the first game, so that free throw, it was close. What is that? Within 5 of one another at 23 and 18. But the difference being Brooklyn shot 13 of 23 overall. KD was un-KD like at 3 of 6. Nick Claxton was over 3 from the line. And those rim runs to where Harden is the gravity that's pulling in his defender, and he throws him a lob, and he wasn't finishing those, and he finally hit one, and Harden looked up to the sky and was like, "Thank God," because that is a staple of James Harden's game, as they pointed out on the broadcast. But rim running or rim rolling centers always do well with Harden, just because he can draw in those extra defenders. Um, Now it's hard to project going forward for any of these teams that this is somehow basically representative of what they're going to do overall, because the Nets especially, they got no production off their bench outside of Patty Mills, and Patty Mills was lights out. It was great, and um, a reason why most people, myself included, thought that was a phenomenal pickup, because he's played in these big moments. He's had to carry an offense on those second units, but in high leverage situations with the Spurs, and he has championship pedigree. So to add someone like that to this overall mix, and now with Kyrie not going to be with the team until he gets vaccinated, if and when that comes, well, you have a solid player there. But no other bench scorer scored until like halfway through the third quarter, when Aldridge went like 1 of 2 from the line, something like that. He went 0 of 2 before that. And I wrote down in my notes, I was like, oh, okay, finally we're gonna get somebody else on the bench. And I started to hand, to write out. And then he missed the second one. I had to scratch that out. And he got fouled not too long after that, and finally hit, a free throw to give some sort of bench scoring outside of Patty Mills. Just Brooklyn, their offense seemed to be, KD, we really need you to cook, and Harden as well. And then they spread the ball around a little bit beyond that, but not by much. Joe Harris took 9 total shots, Claxton 9, Blake Griffin 5. Patty was the biggest of all those others. 11 shots. He went 7 of 11 and 7 of 7 from 3-point land. I mean, that's a great night. Um, but after that, not a single made bucket from anybody else. James Johnson missed. Javon Carter, LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul Millsap didn't attempt a shot. Cameron Thomas missed. Bruce Brown, which was surprising, a staple of the starting lineup and heavy minutes from last season, only played 3 minutes and 45 seconds in this game. And I'm curious as to know why exactly that happened, because Bruce Brown, I assumed, would figure heavily into their plans as a team overall. Maybe he wasn't 100%, or Steve Nash was kind of looking to figure out different combinations of lineups to get runs on various guys, see what he's got on his hands here. But it was kind of a mediocre night from the supporting cast, and asking KD to do quite a bit. But then on the flip side, the Bucks were spreading the ball around. They had more players. They had 6 players in double digits, which is excellent. Giannis, with his new free throw routine, went 7 of 9 from the line. He sped it up, so now it's somewhere around the 6 to 7 second, instead of the 12 to 14, which is a violation. But just one dribble and shot goes up. It just relaxes and goes into the shooting motion. Went 7 of 9. I really think the performance in the closeout game, where he finally got over his free throw yips, has psychologically elevated him to a level where fouling him is no longer a hack-a-shack situation, and you need to be judicious as to when you do this because he's going to get to the rim. It's what he does. Um, the other thing that Brooklyn clearly is understanding of, but they need to figure out something for is they got murdered on the offensive rebounds. The Bucks ended up with 13 to Brooklyn's 5, but the 13, like there were numerous where they're getting 2 and 3 shots off of one possession because there's nobody to really stifle them. If it's not going to be Claxton, then it's certainly not going to be Griffin, and potentially you hope that it's going to be Aldridge or Paul Millsap, but they don't have a truly traditional center in there to try and vulture a bunch of those rebounds and stop the offensive boards. So any team that's got an interior presence or size on them, it's going to present a challenge. But Milwaukee, I mean, just play with a lot of energy. They're moving the ball around. Giannis did take 25 shots. Middleton was 17, but the other guys and the opportunities that they managed to get took advantage. Pat Connaughton was 8 of 13. Nwora, the revelation of the night for me, was 6 of 13. Drew Holiday, who went out early, was 5 of 7. Grayson Allen probably had the worst night of 3 for 10. Well, outside of George Hill. George Hill went 0 for 3, but um, they shot a decent clip. The Bucks did from 3, but Brooklyn was lights out from 3. They shot 531. They just needed to get more of them, I guess. I mean, they still attempted 32 threes, which is a great number. They hit 17 of them. But the offensive rebound disparity and then the free throws, the 10 missed free throws, I think is the difference in the game right there. The second chance points for Milwaukee was much greater, and then the fact that they're going to shoot well from the line compared to Brooklyn's, there you go. That's your game. That's your ball game right there. And Brooklyn kept making these little runs to close the gap, and every time they would go on like a 6-7 point run, Milwaukee would stop the bleeding and then charge back out themselves, and then would maintain at that level for a while, and then Brooklyn would eat into it and cut it back down to 8 points or 7 points, and then Milwaukee would run it back out again, and it just kept happening over and over and over again. Just you watching the game, you're like, oh, okay, Brooklyn's gonna make a charge here, and Milwaukee just played pretty stout overall. I also found the defensive alignments interesting. Milwaukee was basically switching everything, which is very un-Milwaukee like. And then Brooklyn was doing it so long as they weren't getting their center, whoever was lined up at the 5, in a switch because of the size differential. You really need to maintain that kind of matchup. But they were still doing it early on where they were trying to switch everything. And it was an interesting little back and forth cat and mouse as to where the adjustments they would make and whatnot. But it's hard to, once again, read in to the game too much. It's the opening night. So anybody that says the sky is falling for either of the losing 2 teams last night, I think is being a bit dramatic. And of the 2 teams that I think that lost last night, the one, I guess, to be slightly more concerned with was the Lakers. But what happened to the Lakers is kind of to be expected. On their bad nights, this is what's going to happen. They don't have the defense. They don't have the shooting. And then when Westbrook plays as bad as he did, just like, well, he's supposed to be the third, chess piece in this mix. But for the Nets, it's game 1. There's 81 games left to go. You can't read into this too much, but it's easy to obsess over on the opening night because there's only 2 games to look at, and then we have the entire day the next day to digest it and rehash and discuss. Man, did you guys see that frickin' championship ring? They did a little, sideline reporter with it in the top. I mean, it's gargantuan. As far as championship rings go, it looks closer to NFL size over NBA size. But the entire front of it pops off, which they can turn into a necklace pendant, which would be this friggin', you know, what is that damn thing from Titanic? The heart of the sea, the jewel of the I can't remember it. The big gaudy. I mean, it would be massive. That thing looks like it was a solid 2.5 inches long by 2 inches wide. I mean, just a huge freaking ring. But then underneath, there's a QR code. Once you snap the top off with the ring base itself, and I didn't hear on the broadcast, and I didn't look it up what that QR code leads to. Um, but Milwaukee, it's your first one of the modern era, and you guys went all out, and it's a just ridiculously huge ring, and I guess good for you. If you get another one in the immediate future, let's see how you top it. I'm not sure exactly how you do that. Um, so overall, I think Milwaukee played their game. Brooklyn, there's a decent number of positives here. I don't see the bench playing this awfully, night in, night out. I think it was just a bad night from them. And in no way is that, to me, indicative of who this team is and what they could do. So this one, I think it's tougher to read into any kind of prognostication and soothsaying as to, ooh, this is what the tea leaves tell me about this team. I wouldn't go that far at all. I think there's positives for each. There's some negatives for each. Milwaukee started off and their offense looked a little stagnant and like they were settling and they were basically resting on the laurels of their championship. Sorry. The Santa Anas are kicking up in Los Angeles, which has been killing my allergies the past couple of days. Um, so a great opening game. It was excited to see basketball on again. It does not feel that the league should be starting back up this quickly. It seems like we just had the championship. Granted, it's still been 2.5, 3 months, but it feels like it was just here. We watched it. I can still feel the visceral, almost, basically the feeling that I had when Giannis hyperextended his knee. I can replay that in my mind vividly, and that feels fresh. And the fact that we are already on to the start of another season, but now we're back into starting at a normal time. We're in the routine, and just get back into. But I mean, when they're talking about it last year that the Lakers won a little bit over a year ago, and we've had a season in between, it just shows you how quick the timeline was over the past 2 seasons to close out. Because of COVID and protocols in the bubble and all that jazz and managing, you needed to start to get these out to honor and fulfill television contracts and partnerships with advertisers and all that stuff. So the players, clubs, coaches, and support staff, if they want to continue to get paid, then they need to honor these things. And that's why we've had so many games in such a short amount of time. So mild mannered comic nerd said, "Do you think Giannis could be better than Shaq, especially now with his free throws?" Um, he could be a more complete player than Shaq. I mean, when everybody calls him basically like another the next Shaq on some level, it's his unstoppable. He's an unstoppable force at the rim, but I don't think you could ever replicate Shaq. Just a man of that size, mass, and girth with the athleticism and agility at his size. Uh, it's going to be a long time before we see anything like that because, the closest to his size, I guess, on some level in the modern game would be Zion, but Zion can't stay healthy, which is something that Shaq and his massive, body didn't have too many of these Zion-like injuries that keep him out for huge chunks of the season. Now, there was the one point where, Shaq didn't get his surgery until he was back with the team, basically saying that you don't pay me for my off-season time, so I'm going to rehab on company time. It's like, well, that's why actually that contract is meant to be year-round. You need to get the surgeries earlier so that you're in fine shape come season time. But do I think he could be better? Well, Giannis shoots from three, and he's extended his game, inch by inch, further and further out away from just shooting it at the basket. And he's got an advantage over Shaq there. But Shaq in his prime would have been able to bully Giannis and anybody else. I mean, if you go back and watch those games, you could legitimately call a foul committed on Shaq every single play when he has the ball. But the refs didn't do it just because you can't. It stops the game down, and it's not fun to watch, nor is it fun, I would imagine, for the players. Just basically after the 24-second shot clock expires on one side, come down, and 6 seconds later, boom, calling a foul, shooting free throws, and just repeating this pattern over and over and over again. So while they do get compared just because of Giannis's ability to finish at the rim so consistently and to dominate down there, it's kind of an unfair comparison because it's tough to replicate either of these two individuals. But it's nice to see that Giannis is more and more and more working on his game. Those little turnaround fadeaways that he's slowly working on, getting better and better and better. The shot from three now, it doesn't look as scary to me these days as it once did. I'm perfectly content now with him taking those. I mean, he only took 4 last night. He went 1 of 4. So it's not the end of the world. 25% isn't great. You obviously want to be in the mid 30s to low 40s. But you need to keep the defense honest. So 4 shots is something that I'm willing to live with from him. If he makes 1 of 4 a game, I'm perfectly fine with that because it extends the defense out and they have to honor him when he's got the ball out of the 3-point range, and it frees up the passing lanes and driving lanes for his teammates. Whereas if he's going to Ben Simmons this and just never shoot, well, then his defender knows he can sag 5 feet off of him and it clogs the lane and reduces the passing lanes. And we can get to Ben Simmons at the end of the show. But for right now, we'll focus on the games. So hats off to the Milwaukee Bucks. Came out, had a solid game plan, executed, won the opening game. Brooklyn, I wouldn't be disheartened. There's quite a bit there. Guys kept shooting, still had confidence, even when they were missing. And that's good to see. And you shot incredibly well from three. So if you could limit the damage on the boards, although the Nets ended up having more boards overall, but it's just the second chance points for Milwaukee is what tanked them. That coupled with I don't ever see Durant repeating, I don't want to say ever see, but I don't see him consistently repeating shooting 3 of 6 from the line. Durant is a 5 of 6, if not 6 for 6 type of player, just like Harden. Now, Claxton going 0 for 3, yeah, that could be a problem, especially if he's going to get starters minutes. He's going to get fouled. So if he's going to consistently shoot that point, I think that is something that you can definitely focus on and look towards. But the bench really having a bad game overall, you got to chalk this up too. It's the first game. It's the first real full-on live action from all of these guys going at, 100% speed, as opposed to preseason and practice. You're going, but you may not be going nearly as hard, full throttle the entire game like you would in something like this. And, Milwaukee played deeper into the playoffs, plus Drew and Middleton both played in the Olympics to just KD on the other side. But they're fresher in regards to having just played high level basketball. Or anyway, you know what I'm saying. I was going to clarify that, but there's little to no point. Moving on to the second game, which I think, there's a reason they scheduled it like this. The two biggest draws as far as ratings in the NBA are Steph Curry and LeBron James. The numbers have borne that out. And so I think the vast majority of the NBA, in regards to like casual fans and people that are just intrigued by opening night, uh, were more fixated upon this game, um, because I think KD still engenders quite a bit of dislike from people, um, having left OKC to join an already vaunted Warriors team. They want to discount his championships there, which is their right to do. Everybody's opinion is their opinion. Um, so I don't know if you get a as much of a Howard Stern type of hate watching situation with someone like that. And I don't know how much Milwaukee moves the needle. I think by and large, if you were to look at the Q rating, Giannis is liked, but I don't know how well known he is or how much of a draw he is. Um, but on the flip side, LeBron slash Lakers, the number one television team, with arguably the most captivating player, coupled with Golden State and Steph, now probably the second most captivating team and star. So it's a 1-2 punch. The NBA this was their marquee game. This is what they wanted everybody to focus on. I mean, it started at 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Um, so kind of late, but at the same time, I would assume this is the one that they were focused on. And it came out, and I like that it was lobbed to DeAndre and then Looney getting involved. And it was as though both coaches were making a concerted effort to get their bigs, uh, leading the charge early on. But I think for both sides, it's kind of what I expected. For the Lakers, it's LeBron and AD both playing exceptionally well. Uh, and that doesn't mean they can't do this. I'm just saying they're expected to do it, and they both did it to a degree that's just like, okay, well, yeah, keep shooting, keep getting the ball in your hands. But it's the supporting cast around you. If you look at the Lakers, they have 3 returning players from last year. This doesn't happen. 3 returning players, one of which, Taylor Horton Tucker, is out. So you only have 2 on the court that have played in Vogel's system. Um, they're maintaining the same defensive system according to Vogel as they've done in years past, but the offense they're mixing up just because they have so much new personnel. Uh, but to have all those guys, even if they've had ones there in the past in Rondo, in Dwight Howard, it's still a mix of a ton of new players that have not been here, don't know our system, uh, perhaps don't understand what it's like to play for the Lakers because that had a playoff atmosphere to it. There's a lot of hype. There's a ton of celebrities sitting courtside, and perhaps someone like Malik Monk, who's been in the league but isn't used to the heightened reality of playing with LeBron and playing for the Lakers when the expectation level is championship or it's a failure. Um, but this entire collection of new guys for them, it's going to take time to gel. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the league. Look at Westbrook. It's you need to figure out in the mix of this offensive scheme, okay, he likes to roll at the rim from these directions or pop out and shoot a shot from over here. His natural rhythm is the corner 3 on the right side, not the left, and so on and so forth. And it's feeling out your teammates. So the fact that the Lakers were up early, you just have to assume it's on sheer talent because they do have a more talented roster. But on the flip side, Golden State, they're by and large returning a team that has been together for a while, knows the offensive scheme, and knows how the other teammates want to play. I mean, between obviously Curry and Draymond, Iggy is technically a new old addition, but he was there for so long, unlike Dwight and Rondo, and won championships with them. It's kind of like, putting on an old pair of shoes. It fits really well. It's already worn in. Iggy didn't look washed. I was expecting him to look completely washed. But Jordan Poole has been there for a while. Looney has been there for a while. Juan Toscano Anderson has been there for a while. Wiggins has been there so they have more of a continuity, which I think overall translated because when you were watching the game, Lakers ran out early, and then Carmelo does that weird pump fake at the free throw line, and then after that, Golden State just goes on a tear. And the ball movement, I think, was overall between that and free throws, but the ball movement from Golden State was Golden State of old. Guys keep cutting, keep moving. Even if Steph is having a bad night, he's drawing 2 and on occasion 3 defenders onto him, which means somebody else is open. And the Warriors know within that system, the ball moves. So if he's tripled or doubled, don't worry about it. He's not going to just try and force some god awful shot. He's going to kick the ball around and try and find somebody open. And they have so many willing passers, especially amongst the bigs, doing a bunch of interior passing. Like Bielitsa, I've watched on Sacramento, but I think it's the difference of now you're with a team that has a championship pedigree. And those extra small little passes that you may have done in Sacto get converted on a higher clip within this system, and it makes him look even better. But Bielitsa was passing the ball well. Draymond also always passes the ball well. They're trying to find the open man at all times. They had a nice little Bielitsa had a couple late in game, just gorgeous passes, especially along the interior where there's a ton of traffic and finding guys, just little touch passes here and there. There was that great little sequence where eventually Curry comes down off the wing, but Iggy has it close and sees Curry closing in on him, and he taps it back to him, and Curry grabs it and goes up for an easy layup as Iggy is now shielding his former defender. And he turned from offensive player to I'm setting a screen in one full motion, but he made the correct call because it would have been contested and probably would have had a help defender. Whereas with the streaking Curry coming towards him now, he is a wall and it's not illegal because he's already established himself, in that moment. And Curry is A better shooter, but B has a better angle and doesn't have the fear of help defender coming over the top of him. Oh, which by the way, Giannis's help defender once again in that first game, that block on Claxton, but that was coming over to help was a thing of beauty. And then he turned around and followed that up with an immediate, was it a dunk or a 3? I've got it in my notes. I don't remember, but it was just like, okay, rewarding the big guy. But back to the Lakers game. Yeah, the ball movement around, I love all the hype around Jordan Poole. I actually bought into because once you see it from enough people and then read reporters who are there in practices and watching all the preseason games and whatnot, talking about his confidence and growth, it seemed real. So to see him come up now, he put up 18 shots, second most, on the team. Went 8 of 18 and 4 of 11 from 3, which they desperately needed because Steph shot 5 of 21 overall and 2 of 8 from 3, although he went 9 of 9 from the line. I would say I only saw one truly bad shot from Jordan Poole. Just one. It's where he made that long 3, and then the next time down, he just, as Reggie pointed out, this is a pure heat check shot. And it was ill-advised. He wasn't set, like he wasn't square to the basket, none of it. He had the hot hand and he wanted to see if he could continue with that. But it didn't matter. If that's the only bad shot that I can recall out of 18, I mean, the second half, he gave them the spark that won the game. Had they not had his offensive push in the second half, they lose that game because the Lakers were up and they were rolling. And it looked like it didn't really matter that the supporting cast and the Lakers were having a bad night because LeBron and AD were playing so well. Now, here's another game where the difference between the two was free throws. The Lakers shot 9 of 19 from the free throw line. And what's weird is Golden State went 25 of 30, which It's unsurprising that they shot that well from the line, but I don't remember them having 30. It didn't feel like it. When I was watching the game, it felt as though the Lakers were getting a couple more calls. Um, and perhaps it just skewed with the LeBron got the flagrant from Bielitsa, which was a flagrant under the rules. Um, but then the one before that with I think it was Jordan Poole got banged in the head. Um, Perhaps that could have been evaluated as a flagrant. I'm glad that it wasn't. It was a foul, but it wasn't intentional. They weren't hunting his head. The Bielitsa one is like, unfortunately for you, man, that is the way it is called. You hit him above the shoulders. You swatted him straight in the face, even though you were making a play on the ball and there was nothing malicious in it, at least on the outside looking in. I mean, if that was Zaza, I think we'd all assume that was malicious, even in the opening game of the season, or a few other players. But Bielitsa, like, that's just the way the game gets played. And sometimes it happens. It's a bang, bang foul. Things are happening pretty quickly. And unfortunately for you, that is a flagrant one. But the Lakers, only getting 19 to Golden State's 31, but really missing 10 free throws. AD was 2 of 7 from the line. 2 of 7. And LeBron was 3 of 6. Not much better, although technically AD shot 286 from the free throw line and LeBron shot, 500. But LeBron's every time was miss the first, make the second. It was like clockwork. And AD's, I'm not entirely sure if that is going to be indicative of, how he plays the season overall, but I can't fault him. He ends with 33 points and 11 boards, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. That's a solid stat line. You can't ask much more from that. Plus, he shot 577 overall. Didn't shoot well from 3, 1 of 5, but still, he's helping to carry the team along with LeBron, who shot 13 of 23 overall, 5 of 11 from 3. I mean, he was having a game. And then he had 11 boards, 5 assists, a steal, and a block. But he had 4 turnovers and 5 fouls. So that kills you, especially the 4 turnovers. But the ball's in his hand so much. If you get that down to 2 turnovers, I'm perfectly happy with that stat line. And I'm not displeased. The 5 fouls is a lot. And he got that 5th one with a decent amount of time left in the 4th, but you kind of know there's no way that the NBA is going to foul LeBron out in the opening game, and especially when they're not calling a ton of fouls. So the Lakers had 25 fouls called on them. The Warriors had 18. Still, though, not a tremendous number of fouls being called. So I don't really see LeBron fouling out in the first game of the year. I think that's a bad look for the NBA. And I think, Adam Silver has an unwritten rule with the refs in this and be like, hey, unless it's egregious, LeBron, AD, Curry, Durant, Harden, Giannis, Middleton, none of these guys foul out unless it's really just, it's impossible to deny. And I didn't think about it until I wrote down in my notes. In the first game, I noticed, Blake Griffin right in the midseason form when it comes to complaining for fouls. And Anthony Davis, he fell down twice in like the opening 2 minutes. And I didn't think about it until like 5-6 minutes later. I should have kept a tally on the number of times he fell down, because he falls down just so much. Now, some of it is to protect his ankles and knees, which is smart. Come down, you feel like there's any kind of pressure. It's easier just to crumple and recover as opposed to try and stay stiff, because then you're going to roll an ankle and you could be out for a while, or you could do something even more severe, like, pinch one of your tendons in your knee, and it's just not worth it. There are those that are legitimate, and then there are others where it's a foul baiting technique. And it's kind of like, I'm already falling a lot anyway, so maybe I can fall a few more times and draw a couple extra fouls on this. At least that's what I've looked at it in the past. I should have kept a tally on the number of times he fell because he was also in midseason form when it came to falling. And once again, I like that the refs were not falling for it. You saw guys complaining a decent amount, and the refs are just running right past him, going to the other side of the court, be like, I don't want to fucking hear it. Uh, and I really hope that is a response to everybody's glowing praise of the FIBA officiating, because the Olympics were a joy to watch. Numerous times, guys were like, "What the hell?" And the refs like, "Get the fuck out of here." It's just awesome. Just precisely. It's like when you're playing pickup ball and somebody's just constantly calling fouls because they're missing shots, and be like, "You can't. All of these can't be fouls. Every single one of these cannot be a foul." Or you just need to take it in the rhythm of the game because nobody else is matching how much you're complaining for these foul calls. Um, so I loved it. So for the Lakers, and Daniel Cara in the chat says, think Westbrook needs to be on the ball in transition, playing quicker. All half court sets should go through LeBron. Yeah. Although the Lakers were out running a decent amount. I like that from them. Get running. It's really difficult to stop them in transition. They have a number of killers. Um, and they can get you from quite a few different ways. Westbrook is explosive. You have AD's height to deal with, and you can always catch him on a rim run situation, and LeBron is LeBron. So you have three killers on the fast break. And I think they should continue to do what they did last night, which is push on a fast break as much as they can. And the half court set, they will. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that LeBron had 4 turnovers. Well, he's a primary ball handler when you get into those half court sets. But Westbrook had an awful night. 4 of 13 overall, 0 of 4 from 3-point. Did not get a free throw. For him, he only got 5 boards. He had 4 assists, 4 turnovers, 4 fouls. He was a negative 23. Far and away the highest on the team on the plus minus. The next closest is a negative 10 for Malik Monk. But it was always going to be an issue when you bring Westbrook on, whose shooting has been questioned for quite a few seasons in a row now. He's an excellent finisher at the rim, but if you can get him to settle for shots 15 feet and out, that's a win. Even if it goes in, then that gives him confidence to shoot that again. That's a win. As far as the numbers and the eye test of watching these games is concerned, if I can get Westbrook, if I'm the opposing coach and I can get Westbrook to shoot from 15 feet or further out every time he touches the ball, or the preponderance of times he touches the ball, I'm chalking that up as a victory, even if we lose. I'm perfectly fine with that. And I will take that 9 times out of 10. That was always going to be an issue. And myself, along with quite a few other people, preferred for the Lakers the Buddy Hield for Kyle Kuzma trade as opposed to Kuzma, KCP, and Montrezl Harrell. Although Harrell needed to go. But if you could keep KCP, pick up Buddy Hield, then you still maintain KCP's defense. Although Bays did a good job, Bazemore, on Curry last night. And then Avery Bradley, for a while there, he came in, immediately checked in, scored 2 straight threes, and was playing harassing defense. And you're saying to yourself, you're like, look at this. Curry and Draymond, if after the game they're upset and they point to a situation like that, this is why we need to keep Avery Bradley. They weren't wrong. Now, Bradley only played 8 minutes because he'd just been added to the team. But I think it's weird because if you want to say like, oh, you're a Westbrook hater, I can understand you thinking that, because I am down on what he can provide for your team. I just know that in my heart of hearts, it doesn't ring true for me, because for probably 2 or 3 years, he was my favorite player in the league to watch. And he still is, by and large, a guy that I enjoy watching because of his intensity, his will, his want to win. determination. Once he crosses the lines of that, we may be friends and best friends off this court, but when we're on this court, I am going to destroy you and do everything I can to destroy you. Um, and I think that will and that determination can hopefully bear fruit for the Lakers. Like I feel conflicted because normally I root against the Lakers just because the Lakers have, they have so much, and their fans, often are the worst living in Los Angeles just because they have this inflated sense of we should always be the best team, and they don't know how terrible it is for about 24 other franchises. I mean, there's a few that are consistently usually pretty good, and then there's a whole bevy that they may chime in from time to time and have a good run. Um, and then it's just these huge chasms in between, or it's always the best they can do is make it to the 7 or 8 seed, but they never elevate above that. So you have to look back with fondness of, oh, that was a gritty, interesting, fun, scrappy, blue collar, whatever you got to sell yourself on. But it's not like you can say, oh, we were championships. Um, but the Lakers, I'm torn because Westbrook, once again, having been one of my favorite players for, if not my favorite player for 2, 3 seasons. I loved watching him play, just his explosiveness and his just raw determination. That the mean mug that I feel like, Giannis said he had to adopt from others. That was born into Westbrook. I mean, he came out he punched his way out the womb and was just mean mugging the doctor, like I'll slap my own ass type of thing. Just been that way forever. And I love that about him. So I would love to see him on a championship caliber team, him and Melo. I got a soft spot for Melo. As much as he tanked his own chances by forcing a trade to go to New York and they had to ship out a lot of their best talent and draft picks to get him, had he just waited a year and signed for less money because he wouldn't have gotten the bird rights guaranteed on the extra, so he couldn't get the super max. It's like that selfishness cost him a potential chance at a championship run when he was in New York. And perhaps the team would have been better run now, like if Leon Rose was there at his time and they could have formed a better team around him. You could look at the brain trust that was there and say they screwed that up on top of his selfishness, but it's easy to point to for me, Melo's, but I've always had a soft spot. The guy can play. Daniel Savla says, as a Knicks fan, I despise Melo. I don't deny it. His selfishness killed that team for a number of years. You had one good run, but because they had to ship out so much to get him, and then like Jeremy Lin goes off in Linsanity, and all the stories were that he didn't like the shine being taken off of him, so he wanted Jeremy Lin gone. I don't know. That being said, the fact that he is willing to, or has been willing to over the past few years, kind of subsume his own ego and become the individual that he is now of check in, I shoot shots, and I'm a professional scorer. That's what I do. I got a soft spot for Melo. I do. Maybe it's just having watched him on all the different Olympic squads. So there's that enjoying him on those and seeing how good that he can be in the right situations. And there's always will the NBA get Olympic Melo? And I think when that would have been best is now gone. So Mild Mannered Comic Nerd said he's convinced the Knicks are cursed. Maybe not, but signing Kemba and then Fournier, especially Kemba, sure as shit ain't going to help. That dude seems like he's cursed right now, so it's only going to add to it. But, LeBron was quoted as saying that he told Westbrook, go home, watch a movie, hang out with your kids. It's one game, forget about it. In no way is that who I know you can be. Now I'm putting words in his mouth for that last sentence. But I think that's the wisest thing you can tell him because they all orchestrated this happening. If LeBron and AD did not want Westbrook there, Westbrook would not be there. So they helped management come to the conclusion that this is the best thing we can do to form a championship team. Um, so I think that is what the Lakers need to focus on. The rest is it's game one. Um, and it's a collection of new guys or guys that haven't been together in a while. And you need to figure out how all these miscellaneous and disparate pieces go together and who forms best where and what lineups make the most sense. I mean, both games were doing that. A lot of coaches were throwing in interesting lineups or letting second units run longer because they were gelling a decent amount. We saw Golden State do that. And then, Bud wasn't having it. For some reason, he was playing Giannis and Middleton late into the game. Like Giannis had been sitting, and then he brings it back in at like the 5 or 6 minute mark in the fourth quarter to play down to the 2:30 mark. It's like, why? This game is in hand. And at that point, at 3.5-ish minutes, something along those lines, Nash threw in the towel and put on in his entire second unit. And Middleton and Giannis are still out there. It's like, why are we risking injury, especially from Bud, who has been so protective of minutes of these guys up until basically last season. And now maybe the other side has flipped to Bud. So it's like, I'm never resting you. I'm Tibbsing this shit. But I think Westbrook is the only thing I would be concerned with if I was a Laker today. The rest of it, just give it time. And I still think they're the team to beat coming out of the West. Because in a 7-game series, if anybody else stepped up last night, because LeBron and AD played so well, save from the free throw line. But if anybody else stepped up, then more than likely the Lakers win that game. They have a tremendous amount of talent. Even if I still question their defense and their 3-point shooting. It's like, yeah, but they can get buckets in other ways, which is going to make it difficult. So there we go. There are the 2 games from yesterday. We got a whole full-on slate of games tonight, which I will be checking in with and watching. I wish I could sit and watch all of them, but I can't. So I will have to be selective as to what I can watch tonight. But I'm looking forward to it. And we'll close out with a little Ben Simmons discussion because he got bounced from practice, guys, which I'm sure you've seen. He was unwilling to perform in a defensive drill. Doc asked him apparently 3 separate times. He denied 3 separate times. And then Doc told him, why don't you just go ahead and go home? And now he has been suspended from game 1. I think it was John Hollinger put it up on Twitter like a week and a half ago saying the smarter play is not to hold out. The smarter play is to show up. If you want to be Ben Simmons, you still want to get paid, is to show up and be an asshole, and they just kick you out because then they have to pay you. Then it's a team decision to stay away. So he got bounced. I mean, there are clips where he's running through drills, but he has his phone in his pocket. This is the middle of practice. You're getting paid 30 some odd $1 million to play a game, and you have your phone in your pocket. And I don't know how seriously he was going through the drill. It didn't look like he was going 100%, but it didn't look like anybody was going through 100%. It seemed more so like we're just going through and here's the switches we do. And in these situations, this is what we're looking for. So just kind of going through half speed type of stuff. So I wasn't, taken aback by that, but it was the phone in the pocket, which you could clearly see. And then the quotes from guys after practice, but especially Embiid. Embiid took a flamethrower to the entire situation and said, I don't get paid to babysit. I'm not going to worry about that other guy. Look, he is selfish. He's going to do whatever he wants to do, and the team be damned. And so be it. Fuck him. We don't need him here. We're going to move on because we've got a great core of guys. And I agree with Embiid. It's fine, Simmons, if you want to move up. But at the same time, now, ideally you want to go to a situation where more than likely you want to go to LA, but neither of the LA teams have the assets to trade back or to trade over and are willing to do it. So more than likely you're going to end up in somewhere like Indiana, San Antonio, Minnesota has interest, but they're not willing to give up anything to get him. So it's just like, I don't know how interested you are because Morey is on the record, or at least sources within inside the front office are on the record saying we're only taking an all-star caliber player in return because we're in a championship window. So they Oh, Timothy R. Williams says sorry, I got caught reading that. It says the Aussie media is embarrassing. News shows that don't watch NBA defending him. Um, really? They're defending him? Oh, no way, man. He's he's being selfish. He is throwing a temper tantrum. He doesn't like the fact that they called out what happened in the playoffs. He didn't attempt a shot. And something like 5 of the 7 fourth quarter games they played in. Just ridiculous. Didn't attempt a shot. It's not didn't make a bucket. At least you're still out there shooting. Someone fact checked me on that, but maybe it was 4 of 6 just against the Hawks or something. But didn't attempt a shot. So then when the team and the coach, like the coach is asked, do you think Ben Simmons can be the point guard of a championship team? And Doc says, I don't know. Well, that could also be interpreted as, well, maybe we move him to, a different spot in the offense and still keep him out there because he can run the break like nobody's business. He's still an excellent defender, but perhaps we take him off the ball, put somebody else in who's at least a threat from 3, keeps the defense honest, and it opens him up to be in the dunker spot, running in and getting easy putbacks and shots 5 feet in. Like changing his role doesn't mean you can't win a championship with him, doesn't mean you can't play with this team, but perhaps being the maestro of the offense, even though he's an excellent passer, but just get him out moving, running around screens, getting him off ball, because he would be a tremendous threat if he's constantly cutting and running into the lane. That's a dunk threat every time he makes a cut towards the lane, which is going to pull the defense in, free up shooters on the outside. Suddenly, Tobias Harris has an open 3. Seth Curry has an open 3 that they wouldn't have had because their defender is now sagging a little bit into the paint for fear of Simmons getting an easy 5-foot-and-in shot or dunk. There are other ways to take advantage of somebody of his skill set as opposed to having him orchestrate from the top of the key when no one is going to respect the fact that you can't fucking shoot and you're also not willing to shoot. So they're going to sag 5, 6 feet away, legitimately 5, 6 feet away. When you watch the games, there are times where he's 2 feet above the rim and his defender is at the free throw line. I mean, that's more space than you give centers in this league because you are utterly unwilling to take that shot. So Ben Simmons is just determined to be a prick. Now, it's a smarter play for his, as far as he's concerned, because he doesn't have to be around the team and he still gets paid because if the team makes the decision to just tell him to go away, they have to continue to pay him. And there's talk of the Players Association getting involved in on that suspension on the first game, but I don't know if they have a leg to stand on there. Perhaps just they know so long as they tie it up for a while, then everybody's willing to settle. Maybe Ben gets some of his money. I don't know. But Tim shoots back with correct. We hated that he didn't show up in the Olympics. It's a real badge of honor to play in the Olympics, and he snubbed his nose at it. Aussie players said, that's what Aussie players said. He didn't want to be near. We got plenty that do. A mild mannered comic nerd says the jokes online about Simmons are insane. Yeah. I don't know. He wants out, but unfortunately, anonymous sources from other front offices and GMs are like, that's great. But if you can't even play, if you're willing to do this when you have 4 years left and you won't even go through practice, why in the world would I sacrifice real assets to get you here? So it's got to be a team that doesn't normally have the ability to sign, marquee free agents that would go out and make a play for someone like this. So you got to think your, Orlando's, your OKC's, your Indiana's, potentially your Detroit's, just all these teams that don't have a history of being able to go out and sign the marquee free agents. So they had to trade assets to go. Jeremy Bauer says, can you see Simmons in the league moving forward? I find it hard to believe a team wanting him. Somebody will. Somebody will talk themselves into it. He still has a boatload of talent. I mean, he was in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion last year. He's made an all-star, even though I don't technically think he's an all-star. And if you redefined his role within an offense, I think he's willing to work on and actually take shots in the game from beyond the lane. I think he's got a ton of value. But right now, his heart, competitiveness, mental state in regards to team mentality and being there for the squad that signed you to a 4-year deal. That's also the big killer. If this was, he had this season plus next season left, or just one season, this was the closeout season, I think a lot of teams would be like, I don't care. He just wants out, and he gave it a good try, and new scenery would be good for him. It's the 4-year that it's also another red flag of you just got exactly everything that you wanted. This is your first big payday, huge payday as a young player, and you're doing this already. So yeah, Philly's in a weird place, man. Weird place. And if right now they're over under win total slipped from 50.5 to 48.5 last I saw, I still think it's an under situation. They have a lot of talent, but they're also going to be spending the first few weeks of the season answering nonstop questions about Ben. And that is going to drive them nuts. And they don't want to talk about Ben. And how much is that going to affect their mental state? I don't know. But at least the Nets went, Kyrie, we can't have you here because it's too much of a distraction and doesn't make sense to constantly be putting you in the lineup and pulling you out instead of giving run to other guys that are here practicing, because you can't even practice with us when we're at home. I don't believe within the city of New York, and that's where the practice facility is. You have to be vaccinated. I think he can be in there when nobody else is, and he has to be masked up along with, like, if he's got a trainer there with him, that they've got to be masked up. I believe that's what the mandate is, but don't quote me on that. But I know he can't be there for games. So just like what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We need you. If you're going to take this stance, we're not going to fault you for it, and we'll continue to pay you. Plus, this way, if we just ask, we exile you, you get paid for the home games. Whereas if we did this, you can only play on the road. Well, then you're not going to get paid for the home games. So you can take your money, and you can take your still stand on the convictions of your morality. So it's somewhat of a win-win for both sides, and it alleviates the distraction from the team, and they can move forward. And instead of answering questions, which I'm sure they got last night in the post-game pressers of, oh, how do you think Kyrie would have made a difference tonight? And you guys missing him and all those things. I think over the course of the season, that will diminish over time as it's established that he's either is coming back or is not. And hopefully he doesn't do the media circus of flirting with it to have the discussion land back on him and why he's doing these things. And then it just crops up for the team itself. So be a selfish thing to constantly be like, maybe I will, maybe I won't, because it'll just get the media talking about it. And now suddenly the team has to focus energy on that when they should just be thinking about the next game and the next game. But there it is. There's the first official Dropping Dimes of this new season. Thank you to everybody that joined me in the chat. Wow, Tim Williams put $20 on Lakers not making the playoffs. I think you just lost $20. I don't see a world in which they don't make the playoffs. Now, the playoffs, I'm assuming, is beyond the play-in game. They got to make it past the play-in game. But if AD and LeBron can stay healthy, I think it's a fait accompli that they make the playoffs. But they could lose in that play-in game and you win $20. I don't know. But there it is. That is today's Dropping Dimes. Thank you, everybody that joined me in the chat and live watching. I appreciate it. Jeremy Bowers, Tim Williams, Mild-Mannered Comic Nerd, Daniel Savoa, Daniel Cara, Ramon Cook. Thank you to everybody. I'm glad and from Francisco Ramirez Burgos. I'm glad everybody is back for some NBA discussion and action, just like I am. I will see you guys next week for another edition of Dropping Dimes at noon. I look forward to it. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there and staying safe and getting your vaccines. And I'll see you guys next week with another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.